Alright guys, and welcome to my roundup of James Bond 007 games for the Amstrad CPC. Well, so a long time ago I did individual long plays for each of the Bond games that came out on the Amstrad CPC. But now seeing as Skyfall is out, getting a huge response and much praise, and well, it's the 50th anniversary of the movies as well, I thought it was time to take a retrospective look across all the Bond games that grace the 8-bit wonder that is the Amstrad CPC. So there were 5 Bond games that appeared on the Amstrad, 3 that were timed to come in shortly after the film's release, starting off with Roger Moore in A View to a Kill, Timothy Dalton's both films in his sadly short stint as Bond, and then also 2 others cashing in on older movies, Live and Let Die and The Spy Who Loved Me. But first of all though, I should mention that all the Bond games were released by Dumb Ark, save for a few games, one of the worst 8-bit full price offer companies ever. Well, see for example games like Pit Fighter and Super Space Invaders, Badlands, Friday the 13th, etc, etc. Somehow they snagged the lucrative Bond license in the mid-80s and well, they made good use of it. So anyway, we start off in order of game release with View to a Kill in 1985. And this was Roger Moore's final film as 007, and whilst I enjoyed the film and I love Roger Moore, his age was really showing, with the 58-year-old looking positively ancient, and his once light-hearted and fun demeanour came across rather snooty and just out of place and old-fashioned. Similarly, the game of the film has not aged well, but anyway, we're treated to a nice static screenshot of the gun barrel and the main menu of A View to a Kill, and the rendition of the classic Duran Duran theme song. But this is the only game where we'll really see this. None of the games feature or animate the famous gun barrel sequence. Neither did Skyfall actually at the start, which pissed me the hell off. Anyway, annoyingly, the Commodore 64 version did have the full animated gun barrel sequence and also an animated ending, but we'll get to that in a bit. Anyway, so here we are, View to a Kill, and we can choose which level we can play out of 3 based around scenes in the movie. Originally there was going to be 4 levels in the game, but 1 was dropped because it wasn't finished in time. It was going to be a ski snowboarding level based on the pre-title sequence section. But basing a Bond game around the best scenes in the film is always a good idea, allowing you to feel like you're actually experiencing the movie. So the 3 main scenes the 3 levels are based on is the Paris chase of Bond in a stolen taxi chasing after Grace Jones's Mayday, who's parachuted off the Eiffel Tower. Then the escape from City Hall in San Francisco, which is on fire and requiring you to rescue the Bond girl Stacy. And then the mine section, which is the big end set piece of the movie, where you have to navigate Bond through a mine to defuse a bomb that the Mad Max Zorin has placed into Silicon Valley. But that only works if the levels are in the correct order. As you can see here, they're all in reverse order. What the fuck? So we're supposed to play the mines level first, then City Hall, and then ending with the Paris chase. What sense does that make? It's all in a reverse order. Well, I guess why they chose to do this will become apparent soon enough, because the mines level is by far the best in the game, with the Paris level being the worst of all. And note how it also tells you you have to play in order, otherwise later levels are in practice mode. While the instructions elaborate that you get a code at the end of level 1 and 2 to use. But more of that later, and well, let's kick off with the mines level. Possibly inspired by Pitfall, we have our hero James Bond running around a mine, jumping caverns and boiling lava, avoiding falling rocks, collecting items and using various mining machinery. Most important item of all is the grapple gun, which you can shoot up vertically, then you can climb up, and you'll be using an awful lot. Basically all the items need to be found and collected to complete this level. There's quite a few puzzles to solve and a lot of exploring, but the mine doesn't feel too big. For example, you first have to rescue Mayday, who is stuck behind a rock fall, which is accomplished by finding the dynamite and lighter and then blowing the rocks up. Pretty straightforward. Once rescued, you need to find all the parts for a winch to get down to a bomb, defuse it, and then remove it, which Mayday will help you with. There's also numbers you need to collect to defuse the bomb, and some are in very hidden places. For example, this one, number 3, which the location is hinted at during the demo on the title screen, and you have to get to it like this, which took me years to work out. Now, James Bond can't die from falling, he only loses score, but watch out for the timer. When that runs out, the bomb goes off, and it's a tight time limit. And on my long play, following my quickest route with a map in hand, I did it with about sort of 5 minutes to spare, and that's the quickest route throughout the game. But anyway, this is quite a fun and interesting level, and back when I was a kid, it captured my imagination. I spent many hours on it. For the time, the graphics and animation were okay, and Bond moves at a decent speed. However, there's an awkward control system for picking up, selecting and using items. There's no sound effects or music in game, plus quite a few bugs, such as getting stuck inside walls, and the lift bug, which you can see happening here. Looks like poor old Bond is descending into the depths of hell. But most annoying of all is there's supposed to be a hint given in the game somewhere as to which numbers to use in the correct order to defuse the bomb. However, it's never been found anywhere. The only way I worked this out was to break into the game code itself using the WinApe emulator's debugger console and searching for strings and numbers until I found the right sequence. Ugh, that took a lot of doing, but I'm quite proud I did find that. Lastly, however, the biggest bug is that at the end of the level, when you escape the mine, you're supposed to be given a code to use at the start of level 2, but that doesn't appear. Really annoying, and a big thank you to CPC Wiki forum user Johnny Olsen for finding it in the code of the game for me when I did the long play of this game. But a real disappointing end to what was actually an okay level for the time anyway. So on to level 2. Well, things start to take a turn for the worse on this level. Similar to level 1, this is a single screen adventure against a time limit with James Bond running around collecting and using objects to solve puzzles. This time, however, there's no jumping or grapple guns, but instead working out how to open all the doors in the right order in the city hall that is on fire, rescuing Stacy the Bond girl, then finally escaping. So fire is creeping throughout the building, and you can use water buckets to put out the fires in the rooms, which when you do enter them, incidentally, you don't actually see any fire effects, just that the City Hall display in the bottom corner shows the room is on fire and you're supposed to use your imagination or something. But all that happens is you just lose score, so, why bother putting out the fires? The only way to beat this level is to make a map, really, and plan your route, otherwise you'll just end up getting lost or stuck. Plus, annoyingly, you can only carry a few items at a time, whereas in the mines level you could just pick up everything. Anyway, most of the doors and keys are colour coded, but some need to be shot open with your gun. But you have very few bullets, and blow open the wrong door and you won't have enough ammo left to open the door that has no key. Grr. By the way, there's no bad guys to shoot either, so there's little sense of danger or excitement in this level, at least until you realise that you can't be killed by the flames. Although as the fire progresses, it'll be harder to tell which room and floor you're in on the map, so move quick. But again, no sound effects or music, and the graphics and animation have taken another turn for the worse, with the occasional sprite distortion too. Plus there's those numbers to collect again to open the final exit door in the bottom right corner of the map. Thankfully though, there isn't a sequence you're supposed to work them out in, just collect them all and you can escape. And that's basically it. Thankfully, this time at the end of the level, the game actually shows you the code to use in the next level. Thank you. And yes, so finally on to the Paris chase level, and the worst of all, saving the worst for last. Brilliant. This is quite a bad driving game, where Mayday, one of the villains, has parachuted off the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and you need to get to the right landing spot before she lands to catch her. So you need to drive like a maniac around Paris, not get caught by the police, not take too much damage, and hope and pray you choose the right landing spot. Firstly though, we've got a tiny window for a top-down view of your car in Paris, and above that a completely pointless 3D view which adds nothing to the game but just distracts you throughout, and shows none of the other cars in the game anyway. So we're stuck with that tiny little screen and crap sprites, with the white circle and cross being the parachute that Mayday opens, but you just wonder what the hell it is. Well, we get beeps from our little radar indicating when the beeps are faster if we're close to Mayday, but unless you're about a screen away, which isn't much given the size of the playing area, or right on top of it, it's basically useless. So you panic and zoom around hoping to find her again, at which point you may want to try and stick to her like glue, but you often come up against a dead end. And note the altitude reading there. You might as well do nothing until it gets near 200ish and just hope you can get near her again and choose the right landing spot, which can be a bit potluck because she does suddenly change direction and you're stuck in a dead end zone with no hope of getting across the map in time. Other things, Bond does have a gun which you can shoot other cars with, stalling them. So you can shoot the police to stun them, but you can do this as much as you want without repercussions. The police don't react any differently to being shot, or no more police appear, so a bit pointless really. Anyway, when you do get to the landing spot, there's no way to stop the car. It just continuously moves and bounces between walls. No handbrake, no brakes apparently, but yes, God, doesn't Paris look crap and boring, and a pretty poor end to the game with naff controls and even worse graphics. So what do we get for all our troubles after completing this thing with all the codes? This. Absolute rubbish. So, very poor end. Anyway, on to the next Bond licensing game then. And so we arrive at Timothy Dalton's debut as 007 in the excellent movie The Living Daylights. Probably one of my favourite Bond films of all time. And that's likely because it was the first Bond film I saw at the cinema as a kid, and I went back several times because I loved it so much, and especially loved the Bond girl in the film who plays the cello, and I remember sort of begging my parents to get me a cello because I was in love with her or something. They did. I probably played it for about a couple of years before giving up, so that was a waste of time and money, and I was a stupid kid. Anyway, this was a darker, more disconnected Bond, back to basics, and predating Daniel Craig in Casino Royale by about 20 years. But both Phil and Dalton are incredibly underrated in my opinion. Not only that, it was a great story and script, brilliant soundtrack song from Aha, and plenty of excellent scenes and set pieces that are perfect for a computer game. So how does it fare? Well, it's definitely a marked improvement in design, presentation and programming compared to A View to a Kill, and particularly excellent music from the always great David Whittaker. This time the gameplay stays the same throughout 8 levels, all essentially horizontally scrolling run and gun games based on scenes in the movie, and in between which you are taken to Q's lab to select weapons to use, but make sure you choose the right one for the job. Some of them are useless anyway. So 8 levels, and we'll go through them just very quickly. Level 1, set in Gibraltar. You start off with a paint gun. It's a training exercise that's gone very wrong. So you've got some SAS and Gibraltar security guards shooting at you from the hillside there. You can take them down with your paint gun, but don't shoot them with your Walther PPK, which is already selected for you as the Q's weapon. Just select it at the end of the level to shoot the bad guy with, who's waiting for you. He's an evil Russian agent, killing spies. On to level 2, this time you can choose the night vision goggles, because we're at night outside the theatre, escorting someone to safety. But really the night vision goggles doesn't really help you that much, as we'll explain later. Level 3, we move on to the industrial complex. Just got to get through avoiding all the pipes, and so you can choose the hard hats from Q's lab, which will protect you from the falling debris for a couple of hits. Level 4, we move on to the mansion, where the evil Necros has invaded one of MI6's headquarters and is throwing explosive milk bottles at you. You choose a bazooka from Q's lab, that will take him out in one shot. And then finally we confront him again on level 5 of Fairground, where he's got explosive balloons this time. Choose a crossbow to take out the balloons, and then finally choose your Walther PPK to take Necros out. Level 6, we move on to Tangiers, and we're jumping between rooftops here, trying to avoid the local police. We don't want to kill them, so make sure you selected the dart gun from Q's lab, and use the dart gun to stun them and knock them out, and get to the end of the level. And then on to level 7, the military complex. Make sure you've chosen the bazooka from Q's lab, because you'll need the bazooka on the final level, level 8, Whitaker's house, which you need to defeat him, and you won't get a chance to choose a different weapon before the final level. And that's the final confrontation, and that's the game done. And once it's done, we're presented with this ending, screen really, which is not much reward for your efforts, because this is an incredibly tough game. Comments that in a second. I just want to mention what I would have loved a driving mission in the Aston Martin Volante V8, which have those cool lasers and rockets and a big set piece in the movie, but oh well, you can't have everything. But anyway, on first glance, things do seem to look and play really good initially, and seems very well programmed. However, it has very broken gameplay, and very frustratingly so. Okay, right, so you have to run from left to right to reach the end of the level, where there may be an end of level bad guy to dispatch or not. During this run, various baddies will pop up to take shots at you, and I'm going to illustrate this in a video now. You would think you would have a choice of either running like hell or taking each of them down and progressing bit by bit. However, the latter is completely pointless, because once you've shot one guy, he'll just keep popping up again and again and again, along with multiple other enemies. Your energy drains away so fast anyway, this tactic is completely pointless. So you can only do the former, which is just run like hell to the end of the level and hope you make it. And as you can see here, which I've sped up to illustrate, they just keep coming back again and again and again. To make matters worse, you seem to get shot and lose energy when no one's shooting at you, and you don't get any energy back at the start of the next level. It's just incredibly frustrating and just plain stupid. All the programmers needed to do was that once you shot an enemy in their location where they pop up, they simply don't reappear. You've dispatched him, he's gone, that's fine. Clear the screen, move on. With your energy draining so quickly, the game would still be very tough anyway. So such a simple thing they could have done and implemented here. And it's a real shame, because the rest of the programming, for example, the smooth parallax scrolling and animation is excellent, along with the graphics and music. This could have been a first-rate Bond game. Instead, such a daft gameplay flaw completely lets it down, and it's a real shame and big disappointment for me, especially as I love the movie so much and the game initially looks really good. Oh well, never mind. So next we move on to a rather dubious Bond licence, this time Domak going back in time with Live and Let Die, Roger Moore's debut film as Bond in 1973, but still a good choice to fill the gap between Dalton movies, because this one was an utter classic. However, rather than base the game on several scenes in the film, it's based on one scene in particular, famous speedboat chase across the Louisiana bayous. First off though, the game seems rather confused where your mission actually takes place. The summary tells you it's the island of San Monique, a fictional island in fact. The instructions say an American jungle, the back of the box says Florida, and in the actual game it says New Orleans. And if we're being accurate to the film, then we're actually attacking the herring factory and base of Mr. Big on the fictional island of San Monique, but oh well. But secondly, when you find out the history of this game, it's no wonder Domak and the programmers got confused. Originally, this was a game called Aqua Blast from Elite Systems, who are a much better software programming and publishing company, I would like to note, than Domak, which I think managed to get a limited release on some computers before Domak took notice and saw it's quite similar to the speedboat chase in the film, so they quickly bought it off Elite, took it off the shelves, rebranded it as Live and Let Die, and here we go. And probably why there's quite a bit of confusion as to where it's set. So, first 3 levels have become a kind of a practice level. First being a shooting range and obstacle course of sorts, where you just have to try and do the best you can. Then 2 practice missions, one in the North Pole and one in the Sahara Desert. You don't have to complete these 3 to tackle the final main mission, you can just jump straight into it if you want. Well, onto the game itself, and this is probably the most fun Bond game with good longevity and replay value, which is typical seeing that this was never initially designed to be a Bond game, but hey ho. Still though, this is my favourite of the Bond games overall and on balance, because the next one we'll look at is License to Kill, which could have been the best, but ended up being far too easy, so this one takes the prize. It's so fast, fun and well programmed that it's so far ahead of the others, with lovely colourful graphics, fast action gameplay, decent sprite scaling, great music and sound effects, and the difficulty is pitched just right. It's tough, but not unfair and not too hard that you'll never complete it. Plus you can always go back and do the other practice missions. Well, you see, you can crash and explode as many times as you want, but it's a race against your fuel levels, which at times makes it even more tense and exciting, because your fuel is constantly dropping down and becomes a mad frantic dash to get to the next fuel barrel to top up. Otherwise run out of fuel and it's game over, baby. Now you have to weave Bond down the waterways, avoiding rocks, mines and Mr. Big's defences, some of which you can shoot and destroy with your guns. But not only that, you get attacked by planes and submarines too. There's tunnels, ramps and narrow canals to navigate through, and occasionally a decision to go one or 2 ways, one of which could lead to a dead end. Don't worry though, the Q-copter is on hand to drop more fuel and missiles, and you're going to need the latter to blow up the gates between the 5 stages and then finally destroy Mr. Big's factory. There are some cool things in the game, like logs that you can leap off, which you can shoot down enemy planes. And on some levels you can actually jump over the gates guarding the exit to the next stage for one of those cool little Bond moments. There's also ramps to slide up on and nice tunnel effects. But before we take a look at the ending and summarise, here's a quick sample of the practice levels just so you can see them. So this is the practice course, and this probably takes place in the River Thames outside the MI6 building or something, I don't know. Anyway, shoot the red targets with your gun, shoot the black targets with your missile, shoot as many as you can before your fuel runs out. Pretty simple stuff, really. And this is the only practice mission, really, and there's 2 other exercises. North Pole, obviously we see here we're in a sort of snowy landscape, but it's pretty much exactly the same, except now we've got sort of ice patches we need to avoid, planes drop bombs on you, and there's a lot more submarines that pop up. The last one is the Sahara Desert exercise, so we've got a nice sort of sandy area and pyramids in the background. Again, not much difference, except this time your fuel runs down a lot quicker, presumably because you're in a really hot climate or something. I don't know really how that would affect fuel consumption that much. So there you go, and this is the ending to the game. Fight against Mr. Big's drug factory. Simply bounce off a log, shoot off a missile and blow it up, and that's it. Not much of an ending though. But yes, it's a really good game in its own right, and it probably came under harsher scrutiny because of its Bond license, and I think it deserved higher scores than it got in the magazines at the time. But overall though, a really good Bond game, probably the best out the bunch if I'm being honest. And that's it, so we move on to the next one then. And we return back to Timothy Dalton in sadly his last film as Bond, License to Kill, which was a totally new departure for Bond, being a brutal revenge story, with Bond going rogue agent and seeking revenge on the brutalising of his good buddy Felix Leiter, and again years before Daniel Craig era films. Sadly though, it ended up with rather mixed reviews from the critics, a 15 certificate and rating for its violence and swearing, but worst of all, a really poor box office in America. I guess being sandwiched between Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, The Untouchables and Batman, plus a botched promotional campaign from the film studio, ended up with a Bond film that seems to have been quickly forgotten about, sadly. Shame, because I think it's a really good film. And even more of a shame Dalton didn't return, mostly due to legal problems over the ownership of the James Bond character and other problems delaying the next film. Because I think he would have definitely become my favourite Bond. He was certainly shaping up to be, but it was hard to judge over two movies he did. And of course it was 6 years before Bond returned in GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan. But anyway, we're going to start off the game here, and got a nice loading screen and title screen with some excellent music once again from David Whittaker, returning from his composing duties on the Living Daylights game. And just like the Living Daylights, License to Kill, the game is based off scenes from the movie, and some really great scenes as well they've chosen here for the 6 levels, with the first 3 levels actually based on the pre-opening title sequence. And well, you'll be off seeking revenge against the evil Sanchez, first off in a chopper chasing down his jeep, then on foot trying to stop him getting to his plane, then back in the chopper, this time hanging off a rope, trying to snare his plane, before ending up in the ocean scuba diving and water skiing behind another plane, and then lastly before the final showdown in the petrol tankers. But yes, well, let's start this off. And level 1, you're off chasing the evil bad guy Sanchez in his jeep. Sanchez is the drug lord that basically maimed his good buddy Felix. He's seeking revenge on and killed Felix's wife on their wedding day. And yeah, so basically Bond is just constantly chasing him down throughout the game. And on this level, you're in the chopper, but it's not clear in the instructions whether you should be blowing up the jeep or not. In fact, of course, he escapes in the movie in this scene. But what the hell? I think in the 16-bit versions, if he does reach the end before you do, he appears at the start of the 2nd level and makes life really tough for you. But that doesn't happen on the Amstrad version, so what the hell, blow him up and blast through the level, which has lovely colourful graphics and really nice smooth scrolling. But the bullets are hard to see at times. However, there's some very nice explosion effects. Careful controlling the height and speed of your chopper. Lower you are, faster you go, but you might end up crashing into a building. But yeah, actually it's a really exciting start to the game, with some really good sound effects too, and starts things off with a real good bang. And things improve further on level 2, which is an overhead shoot 'em up, like a masher of commando and cannon fodder, and probably my favourite level, with a unique targeting system where you have to hold down the fire button to rotate the gun sight around, which means you don't have to rush madly through the level. Rather instead you take cover, take aim, and then make your move, eliminating the bad guys one by one, or several at once if you shoot an explosive barrel. And ammo is limited too, which means even more care is needed, but makes a really interesting level and different take on the top-down shoot 'em up, and I like it a lot. You do actually feel like Bond, ducking out from behind jeeps and crates and barrels, taking pot shots with your Walther PPK, and making a real Bond moment by hitting a barrel, exploding it, and taking out 3 bad guys all at once. But my only criticism is that the enemy AI and intelligence is rather lacking. Would be nice if they moved around a lot more and took cover, etc. Simple stuff, but given a unique twist, it comes out really well. In fact, I wish there was more levels like this in the game and not just the one, because things start getting rather too easy from level 3 onwards. Here Bond is hanging off a rope from a chopper, and he has to jump on the back of the plane Sanchez is in before he reaches the, leaves the American airspace. Once on the plane, he ties off the rope and Sanchez is caught, but as you see, it's very easy and quick to do, with little danger involved. Still, a nice little fun level. And things, if I'm honest, do get a little tougher on level 4, but not by much. With Bond scuba diving stuck in the middle of the ocean, with lots of Sanchez's goons surrounding him and boats trying to run him over, and mines to avoid. The solution: kill one of the other scuba divers, nick his harpoon gun, shoot the plane that appears in front of you, and then off you go water skiing behind it in a very, very cool Bond moment as it takes off. And it's a cool scene to base a level on, definitely. Once connected, you just quickly pull yourself up to the plane, avoiding the rocks, and we're on to the final level. And yeah, there's quite a few good Bond moments on that. Sadly, the last level is all rather too easy and unspectacular, and a real downer to end on. Bond's in a petrol tanker, and he's got to smash each of the other tankers off the road into the final one with Sanchez in, which will at last kill him finally. And it's easily done. All you need to do is lead the enemy tanker to the bottom of the screen, either on the far left or far right, and then zoom up past him, then use your rear end to knock him off the road. Dead easy once you know the trick. And before long, you've reached Sanchez rather quickly and blown him up. And so that's it for License to Kill. Another Bond game that overall feels a real shame and disappointment, because it's been very, very professionally programmed, and that's frustrating because it could easily have become the best Bond game, but then falls short by being far too easy and quick to finish. Damn! License to Kill, license revoked. Still, I did enjoy the game, and it's actually quite fun coming back to for a quick blast every now and again. Well, but at least it's nowhere near as bad as the next and last Bond game we'll be taking a look at. Which finally brings us on to The Spy Who Loved Me. And unlike Live and Let Die, this was designed and programmed by Domark specifically rather than nicking another company's game. Plus to also wring as much cash out of their lucrative Bond license as possible during the legal disputes in the early 90s. That halted the next Bond film being made, which eventually ended up being GoldenEye with Pierce Brosnan in 1995. So, The Spy Who Loved Me is a curious and probably a good choice for Domark. Many thought it was Roger Moore's best film, and is in many a Bond fan's top 3 list as their favourite best Bond movie ever. And it was a really, really good movie. And the awesome and infamous Lotus Esprit that could also go underwater was a huge moment in the film. And yeah, probably a good starting point to base a game off, because it was so cool. Oh, I've always wanted to own a Lotus Esprit after seeing that movie. And well, you can pick them up these days for under £5,000, but they're incredibly over-engineered and a pain in the arse to work on. But anyway, I digress. And so we end up with an overhead driving and shoot 'em up game, predictably enough. But things don't get off to a good start with some dubious box art that looks nothing like Roger Moore. Well, at least Barbara Bach looks somewhat recognisable. But we get no loading screen. The title screen is just pathetic with basic text and an awful, awful funky take on the James Bond theme, as you can hear now, as the title screen music. There should be a law that games companies should never, ever, ever do this to classic theme songs. But such was the way in the early 1990s, and be thankful it's not the Amiga version you're hearing, because if memory serves me correct, it even had some goddamn rapping on it. Ugh. Should never be done to a James Bond theme. Anyway, so off we go on level 1 in the Lotus, driving to a jetty to get on a speedboat to meet the evil Stromberg in his aquatic base in the ocean. The difficulty here is keeping the Lotus on the road and collecting as many Q tokens as possible, and the latter is really important, so you can make quick progress on level 3, because you need to buy, yes, purchase, buy, give money to Q, so you can get a submarine conversion done on the Lotus. What Bond movie do you remember where James Bond has to give money to Q to get shit done? Anyway, and get your gadgets or whatever. And anyway, you'll need 150 Q tokens for this, so keep a count. But controlling Bond is a nightmare. The Lotus, which was noticed for its handling and precision at the time, feels like a lumpen mess that suddenly starts skidding across the road like it's on ice. So with no time limit in the game, for most of it you're driving very slowly and carefully, like you're on a lazy, leisurely Sunday afternoon drive in the country. Not a fast, exciting Bond chase sequence, no. So yes, be prepared guys for the excitement and dangers of traffic cones and puddles. Woo! How absolutely thrilling. Well, essentially this is budget game quality, especially level 2. Even budget label Codemasters had better speedboat games. And yes, here we are on level 2 in the speedboats, and I guess it's the rendezvous at Stromberg's water base that this is based on, which in the movie was just a short, simple journey of no danger or being attacked from what I can remember. Well, at least we have some ramps to jump off to spice things up a little bit, and enemies that put up a fight and prove troublesome at last. But it's hardly that enjoyable and is mercifully a short level. So we'll just move on to level 3, and we're back in the Lotus again, on the big chase scene in the movie before it jumps into the water and goes all submarine-y. First you have to drive into the Q truck, as I mentioned earlier, and if you have 150 Q tokens, you can buy the submarine conversion. Otherwise you have to keep driving on, collecting more tokens, and the road will eventually just loop around to the start again, allowing you to drive into the Q truck. But hang on, let's stop there, and I wanna just do this now. But guys, isn't this just a big rip-off of Spy Hunter? So we have a top-down driving game in country roads, a truck you drive into to get weapon upgrades, a jetty on the left fork road to jump off, and a car that converts into an amphibious vehicle. Got choppers need to hit with missiles, and even switchblade sidewinder cars. Just to illustrate, here's Spy Hunter on the Amstrad that came out in 1985, and even though this conversion wasn't much cop, it's still faster, more fun and enjoyable than the Spy Who Loved Me. And this came out, what, 5-6 years later? To be fair though, Spy Hunter probably ripped off the movie first anyway, so what the hell. But okay, let's go back to the game. Okay, and level 2 goes on forever, and on some loop fruits the sodding Q truck doesn't even bother to show up sometimes. So when it does, and we get the enough tokens to get the submarine capability, we can basically jump off the jetty into the water. And level 4 sees us underwater in the modified Lotus. Hopefully you bought a few weapons for it too in the Q truck earlier, like this 8-way shooting gun. So we have a very bog standard horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up, with some big mid and end of level bosses to kill, and also some graphical distortions, which I'm sure you've noticed on the border there. So plod on collecting power-ups to restore your damage and get different weapons, which I suppose spices things up a little bit. And it makes a change in pace and style, but it's still a bit meh. After this level in the 16-bit versions though, there's actually 2 other scenes, one an Operation Wolf style shoot 'em up and a puzzle level, and I think another Operation Wolf style game to finish the final level on. But these are missing in the Amstrad and I think the other 8-bit versions. And instead of attacking Stromberg's base, we just jump straight to the wet bike level, which is the 5th and final level, and is pretty much the same as the previous lot, but easier because you're in a smaller craft and therefore smaller sprite to avoid enemies. And at the end of this, you just have to blow up Stromberg's giant ship base that eats submarines in the movie, and is fairly easy to dispatch. But that's it guys, and we don't get to attack the main aquatic base and kill Stromberg, no. And just to add insult to injury, no ending whatsoever, not even a text screen, just loops around to the start of level 1 once again. Ah! What a poor game to end things on. Well, that's all the Bond games then, and in summary guys, a mostly average to poor collection really. Movie licenses always seem to struggle in their conversion into a decent playable game on the 8-bit systems, and James Bond is no exception really. But the best of the bunch being Live and Let Die, which was a game initially never designed to be a James Bond game in the first place, which says a lot. But I have to say most of them have some replay value and not completely horrendous and awful. Certainly License to Kill comes in a close second, with only its easiness and shortness letting it down. Living Daylights could have been great apart from that severe gameplay flaw, and even with A View to a Kill, the Mines level is somewhat interesting and playable. But The Spy Who Loved Me comes last for me, with the least amount of effort put into it, which was itself a rip-off of a game, ripping off the movie this game is based on, ironically, if you can follow that. Spy Hunter, ripping off, yeah, whatever. But there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little compilation video, and like the message at the end of the credits on every Bond movie, I will return. So cheers and goodbye.